welcome back to Masculine Slasher. Today I'm flying solo. We're going to be covering the movie The Deliverance, and the reason I'm flying solo is because Josh didn't watch this movie. I watched it when we were on an airplane coming back from a family trip, and I needed a distraction because I hate flying. So I had downloaded it prior to us leaving, and so I watched that just a few days ago. And now that I have unwound from this trip, I am doing this video so I can share my thoughts and wisdom, or I don't know, something like that. The story itself is based on a true story of a family who rented a home in Gary, Indiana. They were considered low income. It was a mother and 3 children who were in elementary and high school, and also the grandmother. In the true story, well, their true story, I should say, the family experiences things, supernatural things, you know, like footsteps and doors opening and closing on their own, those kinds of things. But also an insect issue, and which apparently there was just a shit ton of flies they couldn't get rid of, things like that. And then, you know, just went straight to being possessed by demons. The mother and the 3 children, not the grandma, because she had a guardian angel or something like that. That's what she said. And so that's the basis of the story. The family only lived there for about a year. And this took place from 2011 to 2012. And then in 2012, the local newspaper wrote an article regarding the story. The story blew up because of a few things. Obviously, a lot of people are interested in hauntings and possessions and all those things. Also because there was 800 pages of official records from folks from CPS, Child Protective Services, psychiatrists, police, a priest, so on and so forth. When this family was in the house, there was, obviously if Child Protective Services was involved in it, there was obviously something more to this. I'm not going to go into that portion of it. It's not necessary. We're just talking about the movie. But they were in there at one point or another and supposedly witnessed some of the occurrences that they have claimed happened. So with the combination of the newspaper article and these actual documents, these official documents, the story definitely held its ground and people became more interested in it. One person in particular, though, of course, would be Zak Bagan of Ghost Adventures. And Zak Bagan irritates the living shit out of me, but nevertheless, you know, that's how it goes. He purchased the home in 2014. He filmed a documentary in it. Then he had the home demolished in 2016, and then the documentary came out in 2018. Also during this, he opened up the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, and that was 2017. And he actually has a portion of the home in his museum. The foundation of the movie is based on the supposed true story that this family went through and all that good stuff. Heaven forbid you didn't completely exaggerate about the story, then people wouldn't like it. I don't think that's totally true, but that's what happens. This happened with the Amityville Horror. A story was written about them, a book, and then the movie was put out, and a lot of people debunked it, and blah, 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 blah. And so with that movie for Amityville, the same thing happened with this, is that, you know, they have to make it bigger and far worse than what actually happened. So the foundation of it is based on the supposed true story, but they did kind of blow it up in certain spots, and so I want to talk about those because it did bother me. I didn't know that this was based off of a true story when I first started watching it. Stupid me knew at one point a movie was going to be made regarding this house, but I didn't put those two together. Let's just say it was stress and CBD gummies. I don't know. But either way, I didn't know it was based on the true story until the end of the movie. Then I was like, oh, okay, it makes more sense now. But that made me even a little more annoyed by the end of watching it when I realized how much they exaggerated. The grandmother is Glenn Close. This has been controversial. The real family, the grandmother is not white. So didn't quite understand why she needed to be in it, except for views. And so it, you know, obviously people are like, it's kind of strange that she would be in it, is that I had watched the documentary Demon House with Zak Bagan, and I remember the interviews and all that stuff, and I remember them talking about certain things that happened where, like, the little boy climbed up a wall and the CPS person witnessed it, blah, 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 but I sure don't remember them talking about how much of an alcoholic the mother was and how abusive she was. This movie, it unfortunately kept bringing that up, and I think the point of it was to say basically that, CPS and the police and whatever aren't taking her seriously because they think it's strictly alcohol and her physical abuse that is causing these children to go through what they are. Situations where CPS is involved in real life, that things are not always done correctly, or a lot of horrible things that happen to children fly under the radar, so on and so forth. So by talking about her being an alcoholic in this movie, it was basically saying, oh, well, it's just because she's an alcoholic and she's an abusive mom and she's careless. And that's the reason why these kids are starting to act weird and have bruises on them and not showing up to school, as opposed to them being possessed by demons, where a lot of people aren't going to believe you with that, obviously. But I just felt like it just kept getting brought up more and more, and I didn't think it was necessary. And it was another thing that took away the focus of the movie. This movie is not considered a slow burn in any way. These occurrences start to happen to this family pretty quickly in the movie, where with the flies and the footsteps and then the children being possessed, so on and so forth. In the real story, the mom is also possessed by demons. But in this movie, I don't feel like they really focused on that. I feel like they focused more so on her being a supposed alcoholic over anything else. I didn't see where she was possessed. Spoiler alert, till the end. Of course, this movie, with any exorcism, demon, horror movie or anything, of course it's going to have a religious background to it, because that's, people who believe in Satan and demons and all that obviously are religious. Like I've said before, we're not. And so these kinds of things don't scare me, and I don't think anything of it, and I usually fall in line with, it's a psychological issue. That's what I usually get out of it. Or fraud. One of the two, just like I feel like with Amityville, I felt like that was a fraudulent case as well. In the opening of this movie, Glenn Close is in a Baptist church, and she is just as emotional as the rest of the folks in there. And so that stands out, of course. So there is definitely, a large religious presence in this movie because of that. Ebony, the mother in this, she doesn't believe in God, and she's no longer religious. And this is due to a traumatic experience she had when she was a child. And she had asked for God to help her, and he didn't. So then she just fell off the wagon of being religious. It's an important part of the story, because if you're religious and you believe in Satan and all those things, and you're going to go perform an exorcism, you have to have belief behind that. You can't just be like, yeah, I'll just say the words, and magically, poof, Satan's going to go away. There are some very shocking scenes in this movie that I was very surprised at. One of the first is when the little boy is in the classroom and these symptoms of being possessed start really showing themselves. He gets up out of his desk, he asks so he can go to the bathroom, the teacher says no. And so he goes to the back of the classroom and he shits in his own hand and he throws the shit at the teacher. I don't know that I've ever seen in another horror movie where somebody shit in their hand and threw it at somebody. So I'm thinking like, oh, well, whoever wrote this story was like, oh, let's just throw that in there, make it shocking. But it just seems so out of place and unnecessary. There's also a lot more other shocking scenes and lines in this that I'm not going to repeat because it is not my place to say them. But I did read an article today that people are upset about some of these lines that were said because they are definitely racist lines. So it just also seemed like another way to get you, to upset you more, and an unnecessary thing to be done in a movie. It seemed like this movie was really borrowing some stuff from Amityville and The Exorcist as far as those shocking scenes, because if you've ever watched The Exorcist, you know what is said and done in that movie, and that was incredibly shocking at the time. Nowadays, for some reason, we're just, I don't know if we're numb to it or it's just we've seen so much. It's not as shocking, but back then it was. So with them trying to use that kind of shock value in this movie, it just didn't work. Another big difference in this movie from the original story is that the house, the original house in Gary, Indiana, was a single family home, small old house, probably built along, I would say probably 1940s, something like that. But in the movie, it's a row house. And if you don't know what a row house is, it's kind of like, they're like townhouses, but they're all lined up together. Why do you have to change the story? Why did you have to make this different from what the actual story was? I know that blowing things out of proportion and putting in special effects and shocking things and blah, 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 it gets people to watch. I understand. But this was far above and beyond that. It just didn't need to happen. The story in itself was scary. It didn't need all this crazy shit to happen in it. So it was a turnoff for me. And then, like I said, at the end of the movie, then it's kind of like a wrap up, like, oh, well, this is what happened to the family and so on and so forth. And that's when it dawned on me it was based on that true story that I already knew about, but didn't know the movie was based on it. And then that's when the disappointment hit. And I was just like, yep, you really didn't have to do this. You really didn't have to go as far as you did. And that's kind of crazy coming from me, who loves gore and shock and horror as a whole. But there's a time and a place, and a necessity in some and not in others. And this is definitely one of those situations where it was not necessary. As far as Zak Bagan's Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, I wanted to talk about that for a minute. Both Josh and I have been there twice. It's probably one of the best museums that we have ever attended in life, which says a lot because we're dorks and we like going to museums all the time. So this particular museum, it's a little pricey to go, but the tour is long and detailed, and the displays are amazing. Each display, each story is in a different room within this actual house. It's technically a mansion, but a very small looking one. It was a law firm prior to this and a family home prior to that. Each room has its own dedicated story. They're all set up almost like a movie set. And that is because the person that came in and helped design it did do set design. So the lighting, the atmosphere, everything about each room is so eerie and really puts you in that place, as opposed to some cold museum that you're just standing there looking at a glass case. And with the Amon's haunting, they actually, because Zak Bagans purchased that home and had it demolished, he kept some of the stuff from it. And I don't know why people do this, but he did. He kept some of the stuff from it. Some of it was dirt from the basement where the exorcism supposedly took place. I think it might have been the stairs from the house. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but I think it was. And then there was like a candle thing because they built an altar to do this exorcism thing. So all of that stuff is in his museum. So if you want to go see that, I definitely recommend it. You need reservations, and you need a good amount of time. And you need to make sure you don't go wandering that neighborhood because it's a bad neighborhood. But definitely go check it out. It's pretty rad. So between watching the documentary and us going to the museum and seeing this, and then me watching this movie, I felt cheated in the way that I really wanted it. Because when I saw that display in the museum, I was like, God damn, that's some creepy shit. Even though I don't believe in Satan and all that stuff, it's just eerie. And how the display is done is very eerie. So I had thought at the time, man, this would be a cool movie to make. Bringing an awareness to how low-income families get treated and what they have to deal with CPS and all of these things that actually happen in real life. But I don't think we needed to dwell on that. And it was way too much. Monique actually plays the CPS worker, and she's just a little bit too emotionally involved and invested in this. And I thought, I bet you that the actual woman wasn't. All in all, this movie, I will never watch it again. I don't see a point to it. I was very disappointed that they went off the rails on certain parts and wasn't necessary, portrayed the family, the real family, in bad light. And once again, this was a story that was handed to you on a silver platter, and you just demolished it with a horrible story. It didn't need to be done. It didn't need to be this bad. I didn't even recommend Josh to watch this. After that, I said, don't waste your time, because it wasn't that good to me. Now, for folks that are religious, and maybe even folks that have had this type of life experience of dealing with CPS or low income, those kinds of things, this might appeal to you more. But hold on to your hat, because, like I said, there's just a lot of things said and actions made in this that are pretty shocking to some folks, just not to me anymore. But yeah, it's definitely a movie that is geared towards people who do value religion and that kind of thing in their life. And that's what The Exorcist did. That's what Amityville did. Any of these movies where there's a demon possession, they're trying to tug at you with that. And it just doesn't work on us because we don't believe in it. So, if you want to give it a shot, you can. It's on Netflix. But like I said, after you watch this, then go and find Demon House or The Demon House, whatever it's called, and watch that whole story as well. Because then I think you might see what I'm referring to as far as their exaggerations that weren't necessary. I respect all the actors that are in this. Of course, Glenn Close, from Fatal Attraction, which was one of the first horror movies that I watched when I was a kid, aside from Nightmare on Elm Street. And, made me always go, somebody better not cheat on me. I'm going to find a rabbit and put it in some stew. But also Monique, who was in Precious, which is an amazing movie, and she did an amazing job in this. Omar Epps, which I've seen in so many different movies, and he's an amazing actor as well. The kids did a great job. Everybody in it did an amazing job. If you want to give it a shot, go right ahead. But these are my feelings about it, my personal feelings. They're not Josh's, because like I said, he hasn't seen it. But I have, and if it weren't for the fact that I was trying to distract myself while flying, I probably would have turned it off much earlier. If we were at home, I would have turned it off. Let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate all the support that folks have given us thus far. We're almost up to our 1-year anniversary, and that's a big deal for us. So we appreciate everybody watching and taking the time to listen to us and our banter. So anyway, we'll see you next time, or, well, maybe I'll see you next time. Who knows? All right, bye.